What's up guys, Justin here with the RenderingEssentials.com, back with another real-time rendering tutorial for you. So in this series we're going to start talking about how to use Twinmotion, which is the real-time rendering program that's being made available by Epic Games. So we're going to go through everything kind of start to finish. So in this video I'm going to give you an introduction to where you can get it, how the workspace works, how to get started with it, and then we'll kind of go from there. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. Alright, so first things first, how to get Twinmotion. So right now you can go to unrealengine.com and this is the full URL. I'm looking under the tab for Enterprise and Twinmotion in order to download that, and you can click on this button right here and you're gonna have to create a login, and what that's gonna do is that's gonna download the Epic Games desktop window, and within that there's going to be a tab in there for Twinmotion. So you're going to want to download that. If you have the older Epic Games window, you may have to update it to get this tab to show up, but if you click on this, there's then a button for install Twinmotion, and what that's going to do is that's going to download and install this so that you can access it. And so once you do that, you should be able to just click on the button to run that right here in order to bring that up on your computer. And mine's a little bit different because I had to download it on a different computer and install it manually because my internet connection is really slow. So mine looks a little bit different than yours, just because I don't have it installed through this, but you should run through the Epic Games window if you can. And so you can go ahead and click the button to run this once you get this installed, and then what that's going to do is that's going to pop up your Twinmotion window. So your Twinmotion window is going to be where you're going to do most of your work inside of Twinmotion. So what this is going to do is this is going to pop up a window giving you some kind of basic navigation options and a couple links. So to start off, there's a couple add-ins available. I think the add-ins for this one right now are like Rhino, or no, it's ArchiCAD and Revit. So there's like a direct plugin for those two kinds of models. Everything else we're just kind of importing the models manually. So there's only a couple add-ins right here. If you're not using ArchiCAD or Revit, you don't really need to worry about this too much. Then the other option down here, if you click on this, this will bring up Twinmotion's YouTube channel, which has some tutorials and things like that. I'm going to try to get a little more in-depth on this channel than what they have on that one. And so the other thing that you can do inside this window is, depending on which 3D modeling program you've been using, you can actually set the navigation mode. So you can see how if I click on SketchUp, for example, this will change my shift and middle mouse button to pan, which is more of a SketchUp navigation thing, where if you click on Twinmotion, you can see how it's going to be a little bit different. The middle mouse button doesn't orbit, it actually pans. So this actually allows you to customize your navigation, which is really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to SketchUp just because that's what I'm most familiar with. The other thing you can do if you want is you can uncheck this box if you don't want this window to pop up every single time. But once you're done, once you've got this set, you can just click this X button, and that's going to pop up your project view inside of Twinmotion. And so what I want to do is I just want to kind of familiarize you with the different things that are available in here, the different views, things like that, what the menus do. We'll get into all of this in more detail in future tutorials, but I just want to kind of show you around a little bit. So the first thing is navigation, and honestly probably the best way to get started is let's go up to File, Demo Scenes, and let's open up the Materials Room demo scene. So what that's going to do is that's just going to give us a scene that we can kind of fly around and kind of explore a little bit more. This should have gotten installed with Twinmotion when you first open this up. So I'm going to open up this demo scene, and you're going to notice that this actually brings in a model, and I can actually look around and fly around. And so navigation is pretty standard. You use the WASD keys to move forward and back, left and right, and then the Q and the E keys go up and down. So pretty standard WASD navigation. And so the other thing to know about this is left clicking on different things inside of this model is going to select them. So you can see how I can click on all these different items and select them, and I get some options about things that we can do with them. So like for example, these lights, you can adjust things like brightness and size and things like that. So left clicking is going to select things. if you hold the right mouse button, depending on the navigation that you have selected, that's going to allow you to look around. So right now I'm holding the right mouse button, and that's basically changing the orientation of my camera to look at different things. So like for example, if I want to look at this dude behind the desk, I could just hold my right mouse button and drag my mouse. And then depending on which option you had, your middle mouse button is going to do a couple different things, or your middle mouse button is going to do different things depending on what you selected. For me, since I selected the option for SketchUp mode, the middle mouse button is going to orbit. Depending on which option you selected, that may do something a little bit different. But that's kind of general navigation, and once you put those things together, you can use this to kind of walk around inside of this model. And so now let's take a look at our different menu options and things like that. So the menu at the top is going to have your standard things that are usually contained inside of a program like this. So this is where your open and your save and your import and all of those options are going to be, as well as simple things like undo, redo, stuff like that. There's some other options in here that we may talk about a little bit later. There's a bunch of different things in here for things that can help you out. So you can go to the website or the forum or the YouTube channel, things like that. So pretty standard things inside of this menu option. And then down below, you're going to notice that you've got a whole bunch of other options in here. These are going to be where you're going to be able to import and add and change things inside of your renderings or inside of your models. So, and we'll run through these a little more in depth in a little bit, but just know these are down here, and these are what you're going to use to export your images and add different models and things like that. So, and then the other thing is there's also a couple options actually inside of your viewport up here that are going to let you do different things. So like for example, if I click on this arrow right here, that's going to pop out a window that's going to allow me to look through my library of different things. You're going to notice that there are things contained inside of Twinmotion that you can access that are all installed as a part of the base installation. So this is where you can find your library of different objects. Like for example, if you wanted to add a person, you could find the different 3D models for people right here, and you can bring them into your actual rendering. So the other thing is that's also going to be where you're going to find your materials. So like for example, if I was to use the material picker here, you can click on a different material and you're going to get a whole bunch of different materials inside of your library that you can adjust. So let's say I wanted a different metal on this floor or something like that, I could just drag this in on that location. So not only is this going to give you access to your library, which you can get to by clicking on library, you can also access things like your materials as well. So that's also going to be where you're going to access things like that. And we'll get into editing materials and things like that in a future video. So there's a couple other things that are going to affect your visibilities and other things in here as well. So the first is this little eye, and so inside the little eye you can open this up and you can affect things like the time of day. So like for example, I can fully adjust the time of day just by dragging this little slider right here. So you can adjust your daytime based on this. Then there's other things in here as well, like your navigation speed, some different view options like being able to take screenshots and things like that. Your different views, so if you wanted like a top-down view or a perspective view, those are all contained in here as well. So when I'm running through these pretty quickly, but I just want you to have an idea of the different options that are in here. So, and we can talk about these a little bit more a little bit later. One thing I do want to note though is you'll notice if you mouse over different things, there's actually a F1 with a little YouTube icon in here. What that means is if you mouse over one of these and press the F1 key, what that's going to do, and it's doing this in a different window for me, but when you press that F1 key, what that's going to do is that's going to bring up a window with a tutorial video right here that shows you what those different things did. So like for example, for the speed one, when I held the F1, or when I pressed the F1 key, when I moused over that, you can see how you get this little video clip in here kind of showing you what that does. And I wish these were a little more detailed, but that's okay. At least you have an option in here to kind of learn what those different things do with little short clips. So So there's a lot of different things that you can select in here. And then the other thing is, if you click on the right hand side, you're going to notice what this brings up is basically like an outliner, or like the outliner for SketchUp. I'm not sure what the actual name of this is, but you can go through and you can open up different filters and things like that. So you can filter for different objects that are inside of here. So you can see how if these were labeled, it would be really easy to find something and adjust it. You can filter for your different lights if you want to find those. So like for example, if I click on this light, you can see how that gets selected in this list. And you can click on this and you can do a whole bunch of different things with these items, like renaming them, or you can make them different instances of the same thing, things like that. You can also hide or unhide or turn them on and off based on what's shown in here as well. So if I click on this Adrian model right here that I brought in, and I'm going to drag him over here just a little bit, you can see how I can turn him on and off by clicking on the eye right here. So this gives you the option to do different things like that. I believe you can do a shift click and you can like group them and things like that as well, in order to make this a little bit more organized. So this is where you're going to do a lot of the organization inside of your renderings. And then also, if you click on this button down below, that's going to pop up a statistics window that's going to show how well your PC is actually rendering and showing all of these different things inside of this model. So you can see the number of frames in here and everything else. So you can see how quickly your computer is actually keeping up with this. So you can see how mine's doing pretty well, and I've got a thumbs up item right here. If it's not doing very well, if you have a really low frame rate, you may want to consider going in and changing your preferences in your quality to something a little bit lower, so this runs a little bit better in your viewport here. And so I don't want to get too in depth with these items down here, but you can see how there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can click on this button right here in order to start a new scene or open a different scene, things like that, as well as merging some things together. A lot of these options are contained up above as well, so you can click on this item right here to access that. But then these items down here are going to allow you to, basically this is where you're going to manage and adjust different things inside of your model. So like for example, import is where you would go if you wanted to import a model from an external source, like from SketchUp or something like that. So this second option right here, this gives you options for things that you can do where you can set up paths or you can add context. The context will bring in different maps in different locations and also build buildings based on those locations. The background is going to allow you to adjust the picture that goes in the background. So if you click on this, there's different options in here for things that you can add in the background. They're not quite HDRI files, but they're kind of like that. You can also adjust the rotation of those items, things like that, using that tool. So you can set paths, like if you wanted people or cars in your model to walk or drive along a certain path, you can set those in here as well. So this next item in here, this allows you to adjust and add in a whole bunch of different things like vegetation or adding an ocean or something like that, as well as adjusting your lighting. So like for example, I can adjust the brightness of my sun by clicking on the sun in here, and clicking and dragging this up and down. You can also click in here to enter a value and hit the enter key. And you can also adjust things like your exposure or your ambient light in here as well. And you can also adjust your white balance, so you can make this warmer or cooler colors as well. There's a lot of things in here. Like I said, we'll get more in depth in them in the future. You can also adjust like your weather and things like that by clicking on this right here. And you're not going to be able to see this very well inside of this particular model. Just because we're inside of a building. You can see how you can adjust like cloudiness and things like that. And then there's also some weather options in here, so you can see how as you drag this, you can get some snow or some rain in here. And you can also adjust some more items down here below, so you can make it so that there's actual particles and rain and stuff inside of your model. Obviously, since we're inside of a building on this one, we don't really want that right now, but you can adjust those different effects and things like that. You can adjust the wind speed, the smog, lots of different things. So the vegetation is going to allow you to adjust things like your grass and also add things like flowers and stuff like that. So you can see how inside of this little space right here, there's vegetation applied to this. So you can use this to set areas where your vegetation is going to go. So you can see how I can click on this and set that vegetation area, and I can also adjust things like what flowers are going to be in here or things like that as well. And so this is going to allow you to adjust your vegetation, but you can see how you can also drag in things like trees and other plants out of this library that was off to the left-hand side over here. You can see how you can adjust the size and different things like that for those as well. And one thing I haven't really talked about, but I want to a little bit, is when you select an item in here, you can adjust things like the height or the rotation by clicking and adjusting things on this little gizmo right here. So this allows you to move things along one axis, or if you click in the middle here, you can kind of place this wherever you want. You can see how this is all updating in real time. And I'm not going to get too in depth on these, but like for example, you can adjust for a lot of these trees if it's autumn or summer or winter or whatever. So localization allows you to set your sunlight based on an actual location inside the real world. You can also adjust the seasons or the north offset inside of your model to set your true north. So you can see how you can pick a location really anywhere in the world and get accurate, realistic sunlight based on that. So now let's go ahead and let's export an image. So you can manage all of your different images in here just by going to this item right here. So you can click on that, and that's going to allow you to set up different images. It's going to let you figure out if you're going to do like a video or a panorama or things like that. This is where you're going to set up your different scenes or your different views. So like for example right here, I'm going to click on the button for create image. I'm just going to click on create image, and what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to basically save a camera view in here. And you can adjust different things in these images, like the time of day. So if you wanted this to be like a nighttime view or something like that, you could adjust this little slider. There's a lot of other things in here as well, like your depth of field and other things that you can adjust depending on what you want this to be and what you want this to do. And so you'll notice when I get a little further into each one of these like this, like my camera settings and things like that, this basically acts like a folder structure over here. So I can go back by clicking a little higher up in here. So I can go back to my image view if I want to. So that's an easy way to get back when you get kind of deep nested inside of these things. So I feel like this video is getting a little bit long, so I'm going to try to speed this up just a bit. You'll notice when you click on this button right here and you find your image, you get inside of what's called media mode. And so media mode is going to kind of show you a preview of what this is going to look like. So once you get inside of media mode, you can't really go back and adjust things like the weather, because those are actually being driven by the actual media settings for that image. So if you need to get back and adjust the weather and other things like that, you can just click on quit media mode. So, and there's a lot of different things that we'll unpack as we get a little bit further into this, but this should give you a good start. But remember how we created an image right here? That's going to be really important, because now we're going to want to export that image. So you're going to set your image up in create image mode, and then this last option here is your export option. So what that's going to do is that's going to allow you to actually export your image or export your rendering. So when you click on that, in this case you'll notice the only one that I can actually use is the image mode, because that's the only one where I set up an image inside of media mode. So so in this case what I would do is I would click on this, and you can see how I have my image 01. That's the image that I set up where things are going to be dark. So I'm going to set this up, and there are a few items in here that you can adjust that I'm not going to get into right now, but I want to export that image 01. So I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to check this box, and I'm going to click on start export. So what that's going to do is that's going to pop up a window that's going to allow me to export this image to a location of my choosing. So in this case, I'm just going to use my Intro to Twinmotion folder. I'm going to just click select folder, and it's going to export that image into that folder. And so if I go in and I open that image up, you're going to see that this is what my image is going to look like when it's rendered. So you can see how it rendered out all of these different lights and things like that. And it's a pretty quality image considering the amount of time that we put into it. And so this is a quick, easy way to start creating your renderings. And the last thing I'm going to show you is, let's say that I wanted another image in here, and we'll just create the image. And this is more of a daytime view. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm just going to adjust this so that it's more of a daytime view, And if you wanted to, you could click on this and you could call this daytime view. And we'll just update this by clicking here. And then I'm just going to go out and I'm going to click in here, and instead of rendering image 1, I'm going to render daytime view. And then I'm going to export that to the same folder. And if I open that up, you can see how this view got rendered with the settings associated with that other image as opposed to the first image. So it's pretty easy to come in here, so you can see how I now have a daytime view and a nighttime view of this space. So that's a quick overview of getting started with Twinmotion. We will get way more in depth with this as we go, but I wanted to give you kind of a starting point, teach you how to export a quick render, and what some of the different settings do. So leave a comment below and let me know what you thought. I love having that conversation with you guys. If you like this video, please remember to click that like button down below. If you're new around here, remember to click that subscribe button for new rendering content every week. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.